Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yoga and Yum podcast. This is your host, Sybil Shelton Ford, and I'm so happy that you're here. This is the place where we practice deep mindfulness, radical self care, and living on purpose so that we can have more yum in our lives. And today, I'm so excited because I have another amazing interview. I've been so blessed with the people that have agreed to be interviewed on my baby podcast. And today, this subject is really all about mindfulness and parenting. So I have one of my besties with me today, Sarah, who
Hello.
I'm going to let her tell you about herself, but she's like this amazing super mom to like six children, all of which she gave birth to singularly. There was no combinations. I was there for the last two, one at a time. But anyway, Sarah, thank you so much for being
Thank you
here.
so much for
And
having
if
me.
you would, yes, if you don't wouldn't mind, can you tell us about your household, family, your children, your partner, maybe the work you do in the world, like anything you want to tell the listeners? Take it
Yeah,
away.
for sure. Um, well, like I said, thank you so much for having me. Like you said before, I am the mom to six beautiful children, five of which are boys, and I have one daughter. So she falls as number five in that lineup. So I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and then a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. And so yeah, I did give no twins or triplets in there or anything, just spent the most of my life giving birth to babies. I'm also a Montessori professional in a elementary um, school, a public Montessori school, actually. So I work at a classroom of 3 to 6 year olds myself. So I'm very well versed, I feel like, in that age. And I also have neurodivergent kids. One is officially diagnosed, my number three. His name is Lyric, and he is officially diagnosed as ASD, ADHD, and has Tourette's syndrome as well. And then there's a couple other things that are in the works of diagnosis for a couple of my other kiddos as well, as we suspect they might also have like ADHD and possible ODD as well. So
So
yeah.
she has her hands full. Like I have three children, um, all of which have their own special needs. So yeah, I can feel six kids. Like whoa, I like super. That's like the Wonder Woman of motherhood. I mean, we're all Wonder Women, but
Yes, yes.
the reason that I have three kids is because I didn't think I could handle four. Like that's not even a lie. So, but so when you are a mom to six kids, and some, at least one, but maybe others might, fall in that spectrum of neurodivergency or
Mhm.
being neurodivergent. One might imagine that you don't have a lot of time to yourself.
This is
Like you're
very
just that
accurate. Yes.
managing the managing of schedules and individual needs and all that stuff. Do you have a mindful practice of your own, like with journaling or meditation or movement? Like, do you have your own practices to stay grounded? I guess would be another way of thinking about it.
I do, actually. Yeah. I would say there's a few different things that I do, in terms of mindfulness and staying grounded and like self-care, as they say nowadays. The I do love to do yoga. I don't do it as consistently, I think, as I would like to, but that is mixed in there. I love to get the kids involved in that because then it's something that we're all practicing together. Um, it's not always as easy during the school year But definitely during like the summertime when we're, because I'm out with my kiddos during vacation during the same time as them. So we like to do what I call meditation time right before bed, and I feel like it helps everyone settle down into a more, restful routine. And that usually does include like really soft, meditative music, a few yoga movements. Or sometimes we just do a quiet activity, drawing or reading or something with very like low light, something very just calm and quiet. Um, the other thing that I do to help me stay grounded is, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I do take a daily shower. Every single morning, I take my shower. And if I don't take my daily shower, I don't get through my day. So that's usually what I do before the hustle and bustle of the day starts, and just, sitting in there. And I guess that's kind of my meditative time where I sit quietly. I actually don't usually shower with the lights on. I have a window in my bathroom, and that lets in just enough light to where, I'm not showering in complete darkness, but also there's not a lot of sensory stuff going on. So I sit in the shower and I usually soak for a little while, and it's really quiet. And like I said, I don't have the lights on, and I just tend to kind of get grounded in there by meditating, I guess, really in the shower. And the third way that I stay grounded is really just the basics. I can't always just hop in the shower whenever I'm having a moment. So just breathing. I know that sounds really, basic and cliche, but if it works, it works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we do. What works. We do what works. I did want to talk about a little bit because this is something I'm learning that's new. Is your sort of your meditation time before bed? Now we're both parents of a child with ASD.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, for people who haven't, if you're new here, make sure you check out my episode. I did an interview with my son Justin, and we talked about autism and mindfulness. So check that out if you haven't already. But just kind of going back around, I just had this thought with your sort of that meditative bedtime routine. When my son was younger, one of the things that he had a hard time doing was getting to sleep and staying asleep. Have you noticed if that time, like if that time, does that time seem to be helpful to him when it comes to self-soothing and sleep? This is just totally off topic, but it's not really. So yeah, have you noticed that at all?
Honestly, I have, and I'm not going to pretend and say that every evening that we practice this is this beautiful, harmonious, meditation. Everyone's sitting in their, yoga poses, and we're all oming together. It's not always like that. So I do want to preface by saying, sometimes it doesn't always work. And for the most part, I'd say it would. But I don't ever force my son who has ASD to participate, I guess, in whatever activity we're doing. So sometimes he is just quietly sitting off to the side. He knows that, he has to at least participate in the way that, this is what we're doing right now. You're not allowed to do screens. You're not allowed to be running around. You're not allowed to be, um, playing down in a different room. Right now, we're all gathered in the family room with this music on. And if you just want to sit there, you absolutely can, you know. Um, and sometimes, it doesn't always work. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't think anyone's feeling this tonight. Maybe we're all already tired. So let's just go ahead and skip meditation time tonight and go to bed. Sometimes that is, if we've had like a really particularly busy day. But yeah, for the most part, I do feel like it does help us all really settle, ourselves before bedtime. And I see a difference personally.
That's awesome. That's a great like tip too. It's like, wow, like I didn't even think of doing that with my children when they were younger. I'm like, that would have been awesome. But maybe that could help somebody else. Like I love that idea of just that. And it is mindfulness. And part of that mindfulness piece is when you see it's not working, you let it go.
Hmm.
Right? That's part of that listening and responding, like, right now, this is a chore. And that
Yep,
meditation or that mindful time shouldn't feel like a chore. It's like,
exactly.
okay, it's not working.
Yep,
Let's
exactly.
skip it. we'll visit it again tomorrow.
We'll try again tomorrow, exactly. And I
Right.
also want to preface by saying it's not always very long either. Sometimes, sometimes I'll turn on YouTube is our favorite place to go for that meditation music because I mean the library of of choices there is infinite, it seems like. But sometimes it's only like maybe 10, sometimes 15 minutes, It's not very
And
long.
that you say it's not a long time, but for many people that are newer to that practice, it can seem like an eternity.
Mhm.
You're like, is
Yeah.
it over yet? Is it done? When I first started meditating, I'm like looking at the clock, going, dang it, it's only been 5 minutes.
I know. I
My
know.
goal was 30. It's like, yeah, slow your roll. Take it one day at a time. That's awesome, though. Okay, so I have another question here.
Mhm.
So, as a mom to 6 kids with different interests, abilities, and schedules,
Mhm.
I have personally seen you sort of masterfully navigate like a lot. Like, I was with Sarah and her family at the beginning of the year. I met them. I'm currently in Florida, and I met them at Universal Studios. But they had all 6 of them, including the baby. And I'm like, yeah, I can help. I'll hang out. But like just to kind of watch you and your partner Cody like manage that and there was just something like if it was just me and my 3 kids and my husband, it wouldn't have. I'm telling you, it almost. I know that, and I've done it before because they've been to Disney and other places, where it's like, oh, there's gonna be a meltdown at some point. Like I'm just like bracing for like the whatever, the scream that I want another cotton candy, whatever. But like the way you all, the two of you sort of have this like dance between you is like amazing. Like I told my husband, I'm like, you wouldn't believe it was a lot of work, like physical. But I'm like, it was like strangely calm, like in a good way. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that, or I'd ask, how does mindfulness or living and acting purposefully guide your approach to parenting? Because from where I sit, I'm like, there has to, that's something. You know what I mean? It, I can't put it into words, but there's something that's magic in there. And I'm like, I want to know what it is, even though I'm done raising kids, but other people, it could help them. So again, I'll ask the question again, like how does mindfulness and or living and acting purposefully guide your approach to parenting?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, thank you so much for, how you viewed our time at Universal. If I'm being honest, I was kind of freaking out that you'd think it was just a circus. So to know that you thought
No,
it flowed pretty smoothly is actually
it
such a
was
relief.
amazing. I'm like, these kids are awesome. My kids would be like, I had different kids. My kids were good. I'm not saying they weren't. I'm just saying, yeah, it was pretty. I was like, wow, this is something. But go ahead.
Um, I definitely would say, as you mentioned before, my partner Cody, I'm really blessed to have him. For the most part, I feel like we're really on the same page as far as, parenting and how we approach different things. But mindfulness of our children is definitely the biggest way that we confront, their problems and just basically, hearing them, I think, is the biggest thing. I know that sounds probably really silly and simple, but just making sure that we know that where they're coming from, as far as like how they might be feeling in their mind or their body. When we were at Universal, you have to really make sure that you're acknowledging this is a really busy place and it's really overstimulating for a lot of kids. I mean, I think when you take these vacations, and this doesn't just have to apply to Universal or Disney or whatever, but when you take these vacations, you think, wow, this is such a magical place. We're going to have so much fun. But to kids, it's a lot of these situations like birthday parties or vacations or just going out in public in general. It's a lot of times it's outside of their safe zone, which is their home, their house, and it can be really overstimulating. So just kind of keeping that in mind and allowing them to verbalize if you could see that they're like, I'm about to have a meltdown or I'm about to feel really upset by something, maybe even try and get ahead of it by like acknowledging, I know this is really hard. You know, if you can wait after this ride so we can get, some food, or if you want to just take a break, we can just find a quiet area to, not do that. Or a lot of times I just kind of lay out for them, what the expectation is, like this is how our day's going to go. It is going to be a little bit crowded, whatever. So I think kind of mentally preparing them for whatever situation you're about to encounter, I think is also really helpful. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but
You want. And I learned that lesson that I'll say, I don't know, they were mid parenting, but when Justin was probably 7 or 8 years old, because you go and um, you, you know, whatever it is. But what I didn't always do was for what was coming. But that's part of the mindfulness. I didn't prepare him to say things like, yeah, be loud, there might be music, all of those sort of things. And it got, he wasn't always really prepared for that. But when I kind of watched his special ed teachers do that and thought, you know what? It's nothing for me to prep him for that. And it changed everything. But just that act of really being very purposeful, that's the mindfulness piece. So we are saying, hey, we're going to Disney or Universal, it's going to be loud. There's going to be people walking around with whatever, candy and this and that, and there'll be
yeah,
so many things there. But let's plan out what we're going to do. That's like that's the mindfulness piece. And I think that's one of the reasons why the kids were so chill. I mean, they were excited. They were excited because it was everything was great and we
yeah,
were in the land of Harry Potter and all the things. But it's almost like they kind of knew what was coming next and they
yep,
could step out and step in. And I thought it was lovely. And that was part of that experience. And kind of building on that, because you are a Montessori professional who's also chosen Montessori education for her children.
hmm,
In fact, I know that you moved two of the kids from traditional to Montessori.
yes, hmm.
Um, why did you choose Montessori?
Um, I could go on all day about why I love Montessori, but I know we don't have like a ton of time, so I'm just going to keep it simple. I just the Montessori approach is very much aligns with how I feel. I like to do things as a parent, and that is, some of the core values that they teach in that philosophy is, peace begins with me, kindness, more gentle approaches, basically, on how to approach situations. Which as someone who has 6 kids and someone who's been around kids for a really long time, both in as a parent and in her profession, and just, in my day-to-day life, I I find personally that kids tend to respond more when you are showing them, that compassion and that, acknowledgement of their feelings. It seems, in the moment sometimes a little bit hard, but really it does come down to something as simple as like, you know, telling them like, I'm so sorry that happened, that thing that you're feeling really upset about. To me personally, it's no big deal, but to you, this is a really big feeling. And, I acknowledge that. And I'm so sorry that you're feeling these big feelings. Um, so yeah, definitely loved the philosophy, and that just for that alone was a big reason why I wanted to choose that environment for my kids, and to adopt a lot of the philosophy into my own home, as and as far as like as a parent, and how I approach different situations, especially with a child with, neurodivergent needs. Sometimes that's really the only approach, is by being able to try and empathize with them as much as possible because they do see the world so vastly different than the rest of us. So sometimes the things that make my son have like a meltdown or whatever, it takes me a while to understand. Once I get to the root of the problem, then I can shift gears and like, oh, okay, this this that I wouldn't even acknowledge as a problem is something that is really triggering for him. So yeah, I'm trying to think of like a specific example, but nothing's coming right now.
That's a that's okay. I mean, I think we get it. I think that was really well put.
Oh, thanks.
Um, so thank you for that. Now, I've spent a lot of time, or I should say, some meaningful time with all of your kids and kind of watched them interact with each other. And the one thing that is kind of cool, and I'm certain that there are times when they might be at each other's throats because that's just sort of the nature of siblings. However, when I watched them when we spent that time together in that sort of stressful, magical place of Universal Studios, um, I observed that they really have this wonderful relationship with each other, that they were really supportive. Like, even when they got tired or frustrated, they still had this support and almost protection for each other. When there was an incident where one of the children wasn't allowed to go on a roller coaster because he wasn't quite tall enough, and he was just so like, yes, I'm gonna do, and just kind of built up like, I'm gonna ride this ride, but then couldn't. But to kind of see like the others that understood, um, kind of rally support for him was just really quite lovely. How do you foster that? Like, because that was, you don't always see it. It's kind of like, yeah, you didn't get to go, blah 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 blah. But like, don't say that to your brother. That didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like the oldest that did get to ride, never. That wasn't even in his realm of thought to say that to his brother. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
sometimes there can be that dig of little brother. Yeah, you didn't get to go. But you didn't see it. How do you foster that?
That's a good question. I think again, I don't know how much of it is me. I'm very blessed with the children that I have, and I think that they're great. My oldest is especially, I feel like maybe he might be instinctively kind of like paternal like that, so that I think helps a lot too. But I think role modeling is probably one of the biggest. It can be so hard as a parent to recognize our own triggers and our own traumas and our own, faults, I guess. But if you can become aware of those and try and do the opposite of that, I guess, that is really helpful because the children will see that, you know, humans are imperfect, but we can always work on it. So I think that's definitely something that I'm always trying to teach my kids is, I'm always really good about when I make a mistake or when I notice that I'm doing something that's not doesn't align with, how our family philosophy works, that I'm always willing to go back and apologize. And then we talk about ways that we could have handled that situation differently. So I think that's also an important aspect is, not just apologizing for it, but like what could we have done so that, next time we can do better. But also just, it was really important to me from the get-go, like when I was first pregnant with my oldest, I knew that it was really important to me that they, had a close relationship. So I always tried to make sure that I fostered that in a way that, we were always doing things together and always just inclusive of everyone. And yeah, just really, like I said, like the role modeling and fostering inclusion and everything, I think that is probably that's probably what it is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have one more question, and it's more like, do you have like any tips or tricks for parents out there who might dare to want a big family? Like, how do you do it? Well, we know
um
how we create them. Do you have
well,
like
like
any Any
when two
like
people fall in love, Sybil. No, no, I'm kidding. um, okay, well, the first thing is technology can be such a hindrance sometimes, but it also can be the most life-saving tool ever. And the first tip I would say is utilize that phone calendar if you don't already. Cody and I synced calendars. This was my idea, and he was a little bit hesitant, if I'm being honest, when I first approached him about this. Um, but I said, let's sync our calendars. And we literally have the phrase in our house, if it's not in the calendar, it does not happen. So, it can be anything small from, I'm hanging out with a friend today to something, bigger, like there's a birthday party or a doctor's appointment or something. Utilize that calendar. That is one of my biggest tools ever, and use it for everything. Having 6 kids, you do have a lot of appointments and a lot of events that you need to keep track of, both personally and as a parent. And sometimes when you have that many kids and you do have a partner, things can get lost in the shuffle, because sometimes you're so busy that don't think to tell your partner, hey, I talked to so and so today, we were thinking of getting together on Tuesday. Sometimes that just gets lost in the shuffle, and then you don't remember till the day of, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go with my friend, and they're like, wait, what? So you don't want to catch anybody by
right.
surprise. um and we don't typically use it to like schedule things like grocery shopping, but if that's what you need to do, just put it in there. Like, I plan on grocery shopping from this time to this time. you know that way, your partner doesn't schedule something and then you're left frustrated, like, no, I was planning on grocery shopping at this time and now you've taken that time away from me. So use it for everything. So that's probably my first tip. My second tip would be, oh gosh. My second tip would probably be, we all help. That's kind of the biggest thing, is we all help. Everyone has to help in a household this big. And it can be something small from, make sure that you are helping mommy put away the dishes, or it can be something big, as they get older, like my oldest chore is always to clean the bathroom. And it started out with me doing it with him every single time, but now he's efficient enough to where he can clean the whole thing by himself. And I even wrote out a step-by-step list. That's the other thing, is everyone helps. And if it's a bigger chore that doesn't require more than just one thing, write out a step-by-step list. Kids can get really overwhelmed if you're like, hey, go clean your room. They're going to be like looking at all the things on their floor, and it's really overwhelming to them. So if you start out by saying, okay, first start picking up all your stuffed animals, then start by picking up all the trash, then put away all their dirty clothes, just putting it into simple terms to focus on one tiny thing at a time. That is so incredibly helpful, especially for my neurodivergent kiddos. It's not so overwhelming to them. And the second thing, or the third thing, I guess, would be, just have fun with it. Having a lot of kids, can be crazy and chaotic and loud. It's very loud here. But if you don't have fun with it, then it's not worth it. We have a lot of fun together. I always try to do a lot of family things, even though people probably think that's crazy, but we do family movie night every single Friday. And we do the same thing every single week. We have pizza. Sometimes it's homemade, sometimes it's ordered in. We have popcorn, and we all pick out a movie. Typically, it's like a Disney movie, but we're starting to get into the age now where my kids are like wanting to explore some other things. But typically, because we still have little, so typically it's a movie that we can all watch together. And just playing out in the yard together. Just make sure you're really involved, I guess, as involved as you can be. Yeah. They like
Yeah.
they like it when I go and play outside with them. So
That's awesome. I love that step by step, because I'm Sarah. When I was a classroom teacher, Sarah, we met because she was my assistant, and she became my assistant in a different classroom. And then when I kind of branched off from that, we just sort of developed this really awesome friendship. But that kind of breaking that down for your kids, like cleaning up, start with this, then this. that's that Montessori right there. This that step. Like, okay, first it's this. Don't even look at the rest of it.
Yep.
Just the toys. Okay, now just the shoes.
Yep.
Because that is so powerful. It works in a classroom, it works with parenting. So thank you for that. That was awesome.
You're so
Somebody
welcome.
somebody's gonna love that tip.
Well, if I'm being honest, there's a lot of things that you rubbed off on me from you. So, you were definitely a big role model in my life. So you are very appreciated in a lot of the steps that I take now as a parent. So
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I
You're
think
so
this was
welcome.
awesome. I think a lot of people will, especially newer parents, or even if you're still kind of in the throes of parenting, I think that there's some pretty juicy nuggets there.
I
And
have a
there's one of your
guest.
kiddos now. Hi, Reset.
This is my one and only daughter. You want to say hi? Yeah. Here, come over here. Say hi right in there.
I can't see the sound.
That's okay.
You
Just say
can't see the
hi.
sound.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Reset. How are you?
You're
Well, Sarah, thanks so much for being on the show. This was
so welcome.
amazing.
Have one of these?
Let me know, everybody, in the comments,
You have
what
one
was
of
your
these?
favorite tip about this episode,
I want
and so glad you're here. And
Thank
we're
you so
keeping it real.
much. Yeah, thank you
We're
so much for having me. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. All right, my friends, thanks so much for listening. And here's wishing you all the yum and love in life. All right, my friends. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.